because I know that you want to do better stuff and mingle and drink some of the drinks that we have. Let me first introduce the guest speaker tonight. The idea is to really spend 15-20 minutes on one of the most interesting projects that we've seen around in the last few months. Of course, the focus is startup again. The other part of the evening, the idea is to have the startups, the tables where you're sitting will be the tables where the startups, 5 startups will be sitting. And the idea is that you're going to hear from them what they do. So they're going to do a short pitch, a minute max, to understand the kind of product they are here to promote. And then we'll have time to interact with them. So why don't we get started? Our guest speaker tonight is Fadi Bishara. I'm sure you'll tell us a little bit more about your story. Fadi's been here forever, one of the several immigrants as us, coming here and making waves in the Silicon Valley. He's been an angel investor. He's been running a number of interesting projects. The one project that we're actually here to hear about is the startup Genome project. I don't know how many of you have heard about the startup Genome. So people that are into startup world, I think that they've seen it around. It's been around for, what, 2 months?
Yeah, we just launched in March.
In March. So the idea is we ask Fadi to share some of the content that they gathered from this project and some of the model they set up for the Genome project and probably getting some questions.
Sure.
Thank you, Fadi, and I'll leave it to you.
Thank you. Thanks. So my name is Fadi Bishara, and I'm a founder of an accelerator called Blackbox. We're a global accelerator. We help the community of entrepreneurs globally, a lot of them from Europe, not just Italy, and basically bridging with Silicon Valley. We started several projects, as Marco mentioned. The most important project is the startup Genome. We attempted to crack the innovation code of startups. One of my co-founders is just asking really good questions. He's just a brilliant 19-year-old who is asking, like, how come 9 out of 10 companies fail? And we wanted to start asking all the experts and gathering information and knowledge, try to put more of a science to building a startup. And we did a survey. We surveyed 650 startups at various stages. And in March, we released the report of the findings. And in our reports, we were able for the first time to do certain things that haven't been ever done before in terms of classifying the internet companies into 4 types. The initial classification that existed so far has been B2B and B2C, and that's not very representative of really what's becoming as a phenomenal industry right now. And so one of the key things is to classify different startups in the internet space only for what we started with, in different types, and then to take it from there and build on the knowledge of all the Silicon Valley experts, the lean startup methodologies that most of you have heard of, and the Alex Osterwalder, another Swiss scientist who wrote the business model generation, and a lot of the best practices from the people here in the Valley, and synthesize all this knowledge into not just classifying the types of the companies, but also the stages, the startups that go through. We identified 4 stages that we've called them the Marmor stages, and those are largely based, some of them on the 4 steps to epiphany. That's also Steve Blank, who is one of our close advisors, has published, and where the lean startup methodology and philosophy has come out of. But we put a lot more knowledge on it, and what was interesting is we validated a lot of that theory and data, and we've discovered a lot of interesting correlations with the data that was very, very useful. At the time we launched the report in March, we got picked up by CNN, Huffington Reports, the GigaOms, and TechCrunch, and all of the publications. The report immediately got translated to more than 15 languages. So obviously we've done something that is really interestingly valuable to many entrepreneurs around the world. It helps to kind of break down to starting a company, what are the elemental stages, what are the key findings. So tonight what I'll talk about is just briefly some of the stages of the evolution of the companies, and I'll share some graphs also, some of the correlations and some interesting things that once you see it, it'll make sense, but it's also now it's interesting to see that there's data that's supporting a lot of this concept. The challenge for the entrepreneur is finding this mate, this first co-founder who's really have that shared vision, who could jump in and dedicate their life to kind of building something great. Basically what we've discovered for internet startups, that they must go through 4 essential stages, and each one of these stages has its own threshold and definition as when do you know that you've completed this stage, and validate that before you move to the next. I just came from Europe and visited many innovation parks and a lot of entrepreneurial groups, and I've realized that there's the temptation outside of Silicon Valley. Most people think they start with an idea, and it's a good idea, and the next thing they go in their mind is investors. They think the next thing follows an idea as an investor. This is not going through stages. We found very, very clear evidence that going through stages and focusing, instead of taking the idea into something big right away, focusing slowly on just validating the steps, increase the chances of success dramatically. But it's like validating the concept initially and creating something minimal, and that requires interviewing a lot of people. Discovery stage, what we found really the most interesting part, some of the findings here is, that was a surprise to me, is no matter what type of company it is, this stage takes around 6 months. The next stage is the validation. This is when you're going to people and saying, okay, would you pay for this? If I build it, here's the product, and would you buy it, or would you spend your time using the service and whatever? And this is when you're starting with your minimal viable product. You're trying to focus things into what are the core features of the product at this stage. What is the most important first solution that is valuable of the entire product? What is the highest value of it, to put it out there in the smallest possible way. The next stage is we call the efficiency stage, and this is you're refining your core business model. You're understanding, okay, there are many potential users for this, but for now, this is the segment that we're going to focus on. This is where we're going to grow, take on this vertical first, and maybe scale that way. The last stage is, the 4th stage is really the scale. This is when you realize you have a product market fit, you have a good customer base, they're coming back, they're buying it. The most important event that happened at this stage, this is where the real funding, this is where Series A's happen. So these are generally the 4 stages. There's a lot more details if you're interested in. It's in a website called startupgenome.cc as a creative comment. Startupgenome.cc. There's a full report with a lot more details than what I'm presenting.